So let it be written. So let it be done.
I said a bad word.
This is Tabletop Terrors. I don't know if they heard it.
That Tim was stunned. You didn't let me say my part. You skipped it that time.
I did. Well, I didn't know.
I had to come up with a rhyme.
I'm Tim. This is my brother James, and we're Tabletop Terrors. We're part of the publishing company Absolute Tabletop, and our whole thing is we love to play games, board games, tabletop games, and we love to help people be more creative. So if you're in for that sort of thing, we're going to be talking about our new rule system, the 5-minute RPG, which will be it's in its alpha playtest in just a few weeks at Con, our upcoming convention. So how's everybody in the chat? How's everybody watching? How's your mom?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, go say hello to your mother. I did it wrong.
Say hello to your motherfucker for me. That's not.
Say hello to the Smothers Brothers for me, all right?
Oh, bananas.
Okay, so.
Carol, I super said a bad word. They're saying they didn't hear it, so I got lucky.
Oh, good.
It was just enough. Of
he couldn't get something working. It was just like, beep. That's why I laughed, because I thought that will be the first word of the stream. That's what I thought.
A stupid little song.
Oh, man.
Open it off camera.
Let's do this. I don't know. Ready?
Oh. Hello, governors. You can't say it like that.
Harry said,
hello, governors. And I said, hello. Oh, he said governors.
Hello,
I pretended he said governor. And I was like, I can't say governors, but I did.
Hello, governors. So we're going to be talking about the 5-minute RPG. James has an idea for it. I have a doc for it. I have to cobble together
a shoe. Like
a shoe.
Lewis. So he actually cobbles in his free time because he feels that. So I don't know if you know this, but I don't think he
because he's acting. That rich.
No. Like I don't think he likes acting that much. Oh. He's so good at it, but I don't think it like brings him joy. I don't know this for sure. This is a little like secondhand, but he does roles and okay, that's cool, but it's not like the thing he loves. So I think that he doesn't always take roles, but what he does enjoy doing is making shoes. And I feel like
that sounds like you're joking.
And I'm being. I know you're not. Somebody told me this was true, but really, what he was talking about, or what the reason is because they were positing, is because it creates something. You know, whereas when you act or when you write or sometimes certain things don't feel, you can't hold it in your hands. Sure. Even if, say, you made a book.
Right.
You're like, you can't hold what the session this might be in your hands. So
yeah.
I just thought that was interesting. So you got to make shoes like Daniel Day-Lewis.
So I'm gonna.
I don't know where I was going.
Well, I will say this. There is a hefty doc that's got rules in it and it's got enough for me to run something. I just wanted to talk things through because when I can say it never fails.
Just heard the dog sullenly come back.
That writing a rule set, something sounds perfectly fine until you write it out and then you're like, oh, that makes perfect sense. And then the instant you start playing, there's a logic flaw. Immediately, someone goes, wait.
A player asks a question like completely innocently. Like, oh, okay, so what if I want to do this? And you're like, oh.
And you do this.
You go, hey, everything you learned, scrap it. I need to rewrite this whole system.
Because it's usually something that the entire system's predicated on. You're like
it's the whole thing.
I don't know.
So they're all asking if it's the buckets. I don't think we're talking about buckets here. People love the buckets is what they're saying. I like the buckets. But it's not the bucket system.
No. So the 5-minute RPG, what they're talking about is the buckets of creation.
Yeah.
I have a bucket prep method, but I also have a bucket creation method where it's like if we're working on an adventure kit, I also have another thing I'm working on.
Did you mention buckets?
It was in a live stream once.
Oh, I meant just now because everybody was talking about buckets, and I was like, I missed something. So.
Do you mean everyone? Do you mean the bucket system of creation or the bucket system of prep? This is certainly the bucket system of creation. So we're going to go through the rules. I kind of want to talk it through with you and go through like what it would look like. And we'll share about it. But this is the first time we've really talked at length about the system itself.
Yeah.
And so you said you had an idea and I kind of wanted to work through it. But of course, we'll also take any questions from the chat. So if you have anything you really want to ask, we might at the end take any super off-topic questions.
Yeah, all the burps.
So I will jump into the doc. Now, do I need to explain, like, go through what I have a little bit of, or do you want to hit me with your idea?
No, yeah. Tell me what you have a little bit of. I just had an idea that I think will work really well for D&D, and it's super. When I say it, it's going to sound so obvious, but then you're going to realize. And when I say you, I mean you and everyone else.
But that to me,
how much it's missing from your D&D games or any role-playing games you make.
Things that are really obvious aren't always.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm like, it's going to sound really stupid when I say it, but hopefully you can help me make it into something people can really use.
I will try. And I caught a glimpse of the chat, and it looked like Carol said buckets of IBS.
No, she said buckets of BS.
Just buckets of BS. Which is fine.
Somebody said they had a hole in their bucket, and Truemate said he was all about that bucket life. # bucket life.
There we go, guys. There's a hole in my bucket, dear Liza, dear Liza.
Oh, she said Lila.
Oh,
you guys are on a whole different level. Like, what the heck song is that?
It's like a nursery rhyme song. Like, it's that old.
Oh, so you have to have kids. I get you.
Well, I'll just give you. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, Harry says, I do the bucket prep method, then leave it in the next room and run on the fly because I'm stupid.
I think we've all done that before. Yeah, we've all done that. So I want to just run you through the concept of what the 5-minute RPG is, and then we'll go through some of the rules in depth, really. I'll just talk about all of them. So the 5-minute RPG is an RPG that you can have someone sit down, prepare their character, and be ready to play in 5 minutes.
So real quick.
Yes.
First critique. My energy drink doesn't have any bubbles in it.
No.
None. Does
what?
Yours?
Dude, yours is super flat. I'll trade you.
It's so flat. Does yours not flat?
No, one's fine.
One of the worst things ever is getting a flat energy drink.
Am I just...
No, there's some.
Yeah, I don't care. I'm barely human.
I want to hear it.
Oh.
There's none.
This is what it would be like if I left it in the fridge. You know how like if you it's still cold.
Opened it and left it in the fridge.
If I opened it, left it in the fridge because it's still cold.
I hate when they don't have that. I'm sorry. Thank you for trading me because I really don't like them when they're not carbonated.
No, I hear you, man. I don't care. Barely human.
Carol says energy drinks are bad for the hobby.
Then we are villains.
Oh man.
Then we must be. Well, I won't. So the idea is that it's a system, and I don't think I want to go into that exact character creation method because I want to try it live first and make sure it all tracks. Yeah. But it's very simple, and the way that the character sheet's laid out is seriously in 5 minutes you can just make a character. It's very quick, very easy. And then the idea is that it's a setting agnostic system similar to like Genesis or Fate where you can run all different kinds of games. And the book would give you sort of structurally some rule basics so that you can then make it a Western or sci-fi and some rules to play with like a sandbox of mechanics. Does that make sense?
Exactly. Dave says this concept is interesting to me. I'm a hardcore addicted to mini RPGs. So
perfect.
Sounds perfect. Yeah.
Awesome. So what is a 5-minute RPG? It's a game designed to make up stories with others easily and seamlessly. So at its core, it is an RPG, but we're going to work in elements and make sure we say a lot that it's a storytelling game. It's a storytelling game.
Yeah.
I wanted a game that I could sit down and play with mom and dad and the rest of, you and all of our brothers and our family that we could just jump into and play anytime. And that is really what I'm designing. I'm trying to design the game.
Someone asks, so what's the appeal of the system itself beyond that? Some systems like that already exist. And Tim, are you sure this requires a separate system? I think, first of all, you answered it. You want something to sit down with your family. And it's interesting because, correct me if I'm wrong here, or jump in whenever, but personally, I'm not currently creating the system. But in my mind, I have had that thought before where I'm like, well, this board game, specifically in board games, this board game's a lot like this other one. Why would this one exist? And I'm like, well, you're going to get a different experience from it.
Sure.
It's going to be different, and it's going to have different interesting things, and you can get it. And if you do get it, you can apply those things to other things. It's like there's no reason for it not to exist. It's because it won't be identical to another system, even if in concept they're similar. Then why shouldn't it exist? In my opinion, because I'm like,
and the other thing too is I kind of want to take my crack at it. At Absolute Tabletop, we make what we'd use, and so I want to take my version and go, all right, well, here's design it around how my family plays, and then play test it so that it fits a broader group of players. But that's a very good question. And yeah, I mean, it's a good question, which is, hey, man, why are you spending your time doing this? Why not just use some of the other ones? And it's like, well, I think we have a pretty cool angle on it. Yeah. And I think it's worth exploring.
And I think something like that can be said a lot for settings as well. And the reason I bring that up is because I've been kind of thinking about a setting, and I'm like, oh, kind of it changes every day kind of thing, you know, like, oh, maybe it's completely this or completely that.
Sure.
But then you do eventually as a creator say, well, why am I, you know, quote unquote, wasting my time doing this?
Sure.
And it's like, well, I'm not actually working on it. It's invading my brain and I'm trying to answer the questions. And I'm like, well, if I don't put it on paper, it's worse than if I do and nobody likes it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Fair. I'd rather put it out and somebody say it's the worst thing they've ever seen.
Sure.
Than to just sit up here forever and I don't know. We're getting into a whole different thing, but
that's a really good question. Really good question, which is why you're doing this. And it's kind of like, well, I'm inspired to do it. Let's see if I can make it work. And I say me, truthfully, everyone in AppTab has already been extremely helpful with it.
Yeah.
And I think that the system is going to be kind of unique and still simple.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Harry asked what kind of dice, Live and Let Dice, one of the people that had the very good question about that. So asked what kind of style we're aiming for. I think we're going to cover a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
Basically, if you wanted to give a little overview of the dice and kind of what the system can do a little more than you did.
Killer. So as of right now, the system uses the same ability scores or attributes as most Dungeons and Dragons and the clones that are associated with it. Yeah. We're toying with maybe changing those up, like the names of them. But the idea is that you have your strength, dexterity, etc. You have all those.
Can I throw in a new sort of thing in the lexicon of what you're doing by using those?
Tell me.
You're using cake mix to make a cake so that you can make like, say a dessert spread or a really fancy like looking cake that you're going to decorate. The idea is you're trying to perfect how it looks at the end. So you're cutting the corner of not coming up with your own cake recipe. You're using the cake mix of strength, dexterity, intelligence, wisdom.
Exactly.
So that you're like, hey, I'm just going to use this cake mix because in the end, I can always go back and go, you know what, next time I make it, I'm going to go ahead and whip up.
Exactly. And I think, too, through playtesting, we might say, okay, great. Look at all this awesome stuff we figured out. Now let's decide what the best cake is for this. Exactly. And now we're focusing on something that's just a small piece.
Now we have a reason to go back and change that. Whereas for now, we're like, oh, we can change the names.
Right. Doesn't matter. There's a version of it where everything starts with an M. It's like might, mind, metal, like METTLE, mirth, things like that.
Basically right now, it doesn't matter. So
just because, stress over it. Do you know why? From a design perspective, if you're a game designer, if you're interested in this sort of thing, from a design perspective, I was like, it was something that would have stopped my progress.
Exactly.
So I said, cake mix.
Cake mix.
I am not trying to do this yet. I have other ideas. So what I'll do is let me jump out. And so, we might go back and do that. So basic concept of the game is this. Every score has one of the polyhedral dice associated with it. Mm-hmm. And then, so can you give me say a D20?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
You pointed at my computer because the dice are behind it.
So the D20 in this game is called the story die. All right. So the story die is,
story die is on the floor, guys.
It's a slippery fella. You take the story die. And then let's say that you're going to roll your strength. You would have assigned one of the polyhedral dice to all of your attributes. Now, you roll the two together. So I'm for current status, I'm calling it the 5 master.
Okay.
So the 5 master says, all right, roll strength. So let's say I have a D12 strength. I would roll the D20 and the D12 together. Now, those results are pretty wild and swingy, meaning you can get really low or you can get crazy high. So we've moved away from a target system. So what a target system is usually you roll a D20 plus the number that your character sheet dictates. And did you beat or meet the target? And that's something that we were like, oh, could we do that? So if it's like, hey, I have a strength. Okay, roll. All right, my total number is blank. Did you make it? No, you didn't make it. We wanted to stay away from that kind of system.
Yeah, exactly.
So currently, it's a very simple, point buy system.
Yeah.
So it's like this. You roll the dice. All right. So I rolled a 1 on the D20 and a 9 on the D12. So this is a strength roll. So now I have 10. The basic idea is that you can purchase successes with the number of rolls you buy.
Yeah.
So again, very general idea, but it's like, okay, a success with consequences costs 5 points. A regular success costs 10 points. And then a success with something good happening costs 15 points. Something like that, to where it's like, oh, okay, so you can still succeed even if you roll low, but you're doing it and saying, okay, well, I'll succeed, but it's going to be at a cost.
Exactly. And I love that because it reminds me of the way, to me, narrative dice completely blew my mind. I can't wait to try Genesis for that reason.
Sure.
Because I like Star Wars, but I haven't been in that many games. People haven't run that many games. But the narrative dice system where you are kind of almost bargaining with the GM, like, hey, I get to do this because of this die. Like, oh, I got a boost, so can I do this? And they're like, yeah, but you got to whatever the bad one is. So this other thing's going to have to happen. I love things that happen in the story as mechanics.
And that's kind of what we're going for here. Yeah. So if you were like, hey, look, I want to try to hack this computer system. All right, cool. Give me an intelligence roll. You have an intelligence of a D4. So then you roll it with your D20, and you know your pool is just going to be lower. So you could luck out, but it's also the math does swing lower. So you're like, all right, cool. Let's see here. So it's a 5, 6, 7. So again, 5, success at a cost. 10, success. 15, success with a benefit. That's the rough idea now.
Yeah,
we have to play test it. So if I'm like 5, 6, 7, oh, wow, okay. So I can succeed at a cost.
Exactly. You can throw a success in, but it's going to take something.
So you have to decide as a player, all right, do I want to maybe trip the security system? So yeah, I hack into the system.
Okay, so somebody asked a question.
Sure.
Oh, so Peter asked, are attributes and those dice types linked by default, or do the players get to choose?
So, all right, I'll just go ahead and tell you. The reason why the character creation is going to take like 5 minutes is because you take each one of the dice and you put them in a box.
Yeah.
So that's like,
so you do decide.
You do decide. You say, okay, I'm going to take, you basically take your set of dice and you put them right on your character sheet. And you go, all right, I want this. And the way the character creation is super speedy is that you draw a card, and that card is, and you can choose it at random or you can sort through them.
Choose, yeah.
And the card will give you abilities, a weapon, and probably some things that other people wouldn't have. That's why the character creation is so quick.
Exactly.
And everything is tied to those. So, on the character sheet, it would even say like dexterity. And the dexterity is if you roll for initiative, you just roll your D20 plus your dexterity dice. Yeah. Whoever gets the highest number wins.
Exactly.
That kind of thing. So yes, those are entirely up to you. So you can have a character who has a D12 intelligence or strength or whatever, depending on how you want to do it. And you roll it with that D20. And then based on those number of points, you buy things. So there also have to be consequences for failures.
I was just about to ask. So say I rolled that 5. I'm hacking into the system. I don't want to trip the alarm, but I say, okay, I'm not going to buy the success. I don't succeed.
Right.
But something bad probably still happens. I don't hack in. Basically, I could probably try again, but then something else goes wrong. You're like, well, you can't just keep trying to hack in. Eventually, they're going to stop you. Or...
Sure. So the basic idea that I have, and I have to workshop this, everything in the 5-minute RPG takes place in scenes. So a scene, specifically, it's like a location and a challenge at least.
Yeah, yeah.
Those scenes are built, the only way I can think of it, we'll call it waves. And at each failure, a different wave occurs.
Exactly.
So as the 5 master, you say, all right, cool. I have this place they need to try to break into. They need this many successes to get into the system. If they fail this many times, and it's basically multiple tiered consequences, up to and including capture or death.
Yeah, yeah. Like
narratively.
Failure, yeah.
Right. Like, okay, you failed 3 times before you got, 5 successes or whatever it is. All right, now this occurs.
Yeah, exactly.
That sort of thing. And the idea would be to design them in waves on purpose and make it a scene that says, okay, cool, this many failures equals this consequence, and then this many failures equals this consequence, etc.
Exactly. And so just to kind of take a step back about that, the idea would be that scenes would only ever be when something is happening. Obviously, it wouldn't be a scene, all this, if they're walking down the road.
Correct.
It's only a scene when, like, it would be a skill challenge in D&D. If you're in the library looking for books, it's not a scene.
Correct.
Unless something shows up and makes it a scene.
So, and the idea behind the system is to keep it very simple. So as of now, the way it's written, everything else is lumped into what we call downtime. Yeah. Meaning you can have a role play, an entire role play moment, but it's during downtime.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if you want to have an intense role play, like sort of Game of Thrones council scene, you could do that with these successes and failures.
Exactly. It's a scene now.
Right. It doesn't have to be hit points in combat. It's like, okay, cool. What am I going to do? Well, try to use your charisma, try to use your intelligence, try to use, and that's where abilities, I think, will come into play.
Yeah.
So like you can have abilities where someone can help someone else or do different things so that other people can be involved, even if they're not the smartest. Maybe they have an ability where they're able to lend you a point or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Things of that nature where you can create a synergy at the table and basically play any type of encounter.
And again, I think that sort of thing benefits from light mechanics on what happens, because it's not all sitting around trying to say, well, okay, my character's a really good fighter, but maybe I know something about, like, you're trying to come up with a way that could help, but you're like, no, it's going to still come down to rolling dice. If you can come up with a reason that it needs to, exactly, you can do that.
Yes. And as of now, there are no skills underneath those. It's just the five master makes the call, like, okay, that would probably be strength.
Yeah.
So anything hitting, punching, throwing, jumping, moving, all that stuff, strength.
Yeah.
No skills.
You're not, exactly. You're not better at this.
Keeping it real simple. Correct.
So Corey asked a question that I think leads into the next part, if you're going to get into that, which is, are there chances to reroll and or advantage and disadvantage?
Yeah. So in our game, we're just calling it lucky and unlucky.
Yep.
Because I want to keep it simple. And simple sounding. So if I say to my mom, hey, okay, you're lucky, you get to roll twice,
she'll remember what that means.
Yep. And she'll go, am I lucky?
She will say.
So that's what the idea is. So if there's a situation where you have the upper hand, the five master may deem that you are lucky. And that means you reroll your ability die. You can reroll it twice and use the same result. So basically, this is where playtesting comes in. But basically, I think if you're lucky or unlucky, it would be cool. And you tell me what you think. If I roll, I'm like, all right, you're lucky. You can choose to reroll one, the other, or neither. So if you got a really good roll, we have to decide, can you reroll both? Or do you get to just reroll one? Or do you keep the D20 and get to reroll the ability? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
And that's the kind of thing where just playing it at the table, I would just be like, okay, how does this feel?
And that's the important
Because I don't want it to get clunky.
Exactly. And I think specifically the benefit of advantage and disadvantage is that you always take the higher one.
Yep.
And I see what you mean because of the two dice, but in my mind, it would be you reroll twice
and
whichever higher result.
Yep. I just was thinking the same thing,
like the other. Well, exactly, but it's worth looking into that. But,
sure. But as you were talking, I'm like, no, the simplest thing is, pick up both. All right, great. So, okay, this is a great example. I rolled a 19 on the D20 and a 1 on a D4. That is a 20.
Yeah.
So here's what I think is cool. I have enough to take 2 successes.
2 regular successes.
2 regular or 1 success with a benefit. Or 1 success with a benefit and 1 success at a cost.
Exactly.
And so I think that it can be a really cool mechanic and an economy where it's like, and then that's where playtesting. Does the success with a cost negate the success with a benefit?
So
maybe, no.
Harry arguably came up with a better idea for the name of the Dungeon Master instead of the Five Master.
Tell me.
He called it the Bucket Master.
Duly noted. So you may or may not see the Bucket Master.
Truemate asked the BM.
Different thing.
Yeah, so Josh says, with the standard 6 attributes and 7 dice in a normal set, does that mean you use the D10 as the percentile? I think that's the thing.
You would use the D10 twice.
Yeah.
Because, so you would use the D20. Yes, you would use it as, you'd use it as a tens die.
Yeah.
So 0 in that case would be 10. So it would just be across, which is, it's kind of like the 5-minute RPG's version of the standard array. You can just slide it around. And that's where the abilities need to come into play, where making up for, basically, I want to have the abilities augmented so a character feels slightly unique.
Yeah.
So it's not just like, okay, so I can just slide this around anywhere, and really the only thing I'm increasing are the odds. I want there to be some cool stuff also.
Yeah.
You know. So then there's a couple other little things, like something we're working on called an ultimate, where if you roll the highest denomination on your ability die, it becomes what's called an exploding die, which means you die, it explodes. No. I thought it'd be kind of cool
if that happens.
If you roll it and you're like, oh, sweet of 4. All right, roll it again. So you get to roll your ability die again and add that amount. And it continues to happen as long as that happens. But I think that would be really cool because I love mini events at the table like that.
Yeah.
Just because they're like, oh, he rolled a 6. He rolled a 6.
Because you can kind of blow it open. You're like, oh, it seems really desperate. Okay. But it's like when you know their armor class is 25, but if you roll a 20, you hit in 5e. You're like, well, I still have to try. It's not worth not rolling it.
Right. And then there's something called an epic roll. I had the exact same thing in the doc.
It's the same ultimate.
It's the same. I think I like I think I like epic better.
Yeah.
What do you think? Epic or ultimate?
Epic.
Okay. I think epic. Like, it fits the vibe of the game. I just rewrote it and forgot to change it. Check this out. I think this is cool.
Checking it out.
High five. Anytime. So instead of a nat 20 or a nat 1, anytime the player does something that the 5 master particularly feels clever or inspiring, they can award them a high 5, which basically lets them do the epic roll. Or no, it lets them get lucky or unlucky.
Yeah. Okay.
But additionally, anytime a 5 is rolled on any die, a high 5 is awarded to the player who rolled it. Just anytime. So the idea is that if you're like, oh man, I could never do it on a D4. But if you roll a 5 here, you're like, high 5. And it says in the rules, it says here's some modifiers.
It says
we recommend that when you say you're using it, you actually high 5 someone near you.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, high 5. And then you gotta do it and be like, all right, I'm using my high 5. And then you reroll and be like, yes, all right, cool. I made it. I had 2 successes.
So TrueMate asks, what is the furthest exploding die roll you've had? I've never actually played a game with exploding dice.
Me either, but I love the idea.
None. And we haven't played tested this quite yet, so none. And then Chris asks, so are you going with the cinematic feel here, like in Star Wars or Genesis? We were kind of talking about that, where I don't know that you have played those much, but or Star Wars, but you know how they work.
I've never played them. I've watched.
But the idea being that, yes, similar in that sense, Chris, where, yes, what's it called? Like story-wise, things will happen based on the die rolls. You know, like, hey, we're imposing that benefit or that negative based on the die roll. And I love that kind of hybrid of mechanic and story.
Correct.
Where that die roll only means that something bad happens. It's up to you to decide what it is.
And so I was playing with the idea, too, of having roll tables if you want. But those roll tables would also come in the form of cards.
Yeah.
Because I think it would speed up play.
Exactly.
So you could use the roll table to be like, okay, cool. But if I decide to do a success at a cost, I think it would just be cool and simple to have a cost deck. Mm-hmm. So that it's like, okay, and then you can flip it over. Now, it can be, for the playtest, probably very general. But the idea eventually is to come out with like mini micro settings with their own sets of problems, cards, like different things, heroes, and all that stuff.
Exactly. Maybe even like a little book about
like maybe like a little pocket-sized book or something. But the game we're running at AtCon is like a space western pulp, like Firefly. Mm-hmm. And so I'm designing like a mechanic and a medic and just like some different classes like that. So for that game, I'm going to make a little deck of like what will happen if it's at a cost, or what will now optionally the 5 master can also write in that wave of the scene. Okay, well, if they have at a cost, the cost will be that the room begins to flood.
Yeah.
So that can be something where it's like, oh man. And so we have to dial that in. I don't know. that's where playtesting comes into play, because you don't want something too strong, but you don't want something too weak either. If someone keeps doing it, you don't want to be, and then bees. You know. So we had to figure that out. Any other questions from the chat so far?
No, they were just mentioning some things, and then saying that we got to play Star Wars and Genesis. Got to get Tim into a Star Wars or Genesis game. Karen's running one. I hope you say that name like Karen. It's spelled interestingly, but if it's not pronounced Karen, I'm very sorry. But she's running one at con. She's doing a Genesis game, which I don't know exactly what I'm doing that day yet, which is the funny thing to say. But as one of the organizers, I don't know what I'm doing yet, but that game looks really exciting just because I really want to try Genesis.
Sure. And we have, we have a lot to consider that day, because we want to make sure everything's taken care of. That's why we've had to actually stagger our participation in games and stuff.
Yeah.
Because we can't all be sitting at a table gaming if something goes wrong.
Exactly.
Who's in charge here? We're like, all of us.
I'd also hate to be the reason that someone else doesn't get in a game because I get picked.
Sure.
Simply because we're running it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I'm like, we'll see. Josh, I think we both agree that 5 Master does kind of sound awkward, but if we say it enough, it's going to be in the rules.
It will, and it's one of those things where you could always say Game Master, but the 5 Master, it started out lame, but it's grown on me.
There's another game where they call it something different, and everybody calls it.
Oh
no, okay, I'm being stupid. It's a Dungeon Master in D&D 5th edition.
And then it's Game Master.
It's just a Game Master is like,
so it's the 5
general term. So yeah, I agree.
But do you know what's awesome is that, again, if I tell my parents, okay, I'm the 5 Master, they'll be like, okay.
Again, like
it sounds like a thing.
It's all from the angle of, if my mom were playing, what would make the most sense to her? Because it's backward compatible that if somebody very competent in RPGs won't say, that doesn't make sense. But my mom will go, all right, yeah, you're the 5 Master. What do I do?
And I can exactly hear Lloyd Collins be like, "Ugh, 5 Master, it's so stupid." Like, just call you a Game Master.
He'd call you a dweeb.
He'd call me a dweeb, but he's
going to do a video response to this, and it's just going to tear this whole system apart.
What a dweeb.
But somebody, Corey asked, are there proficiencies? And I think we kind of went over, there's not proficiencies and skills yet.
Not yet. So as of now, the code word is traits. Your hero gets traits, and basically, remember, all of the things that are going to be on these cards, you can do from the book. Yeah. So it could feel like a very organic, normal RPG. It's a both and thing and there will also be these cards. So that if you say, hey, I want to be the special ops guy in your Firefly game, I go, oh, cool. Here's your card. And I'm thinking like one of those like middle-sized cards, not like a small playing card, but like something like in the middle.
Oh, yeah.
And what it will basically have is your gear, maybe like a weapon, and then a few cool things that your character can do with these points that no one else can do.
And I think that's another thing. Okay, people asked earlier, why would you make this? And again, with the angle of so that I can sit down with just about anybody, quickly explain it to them and play. And then after the session is over, hopefully they go, how do we do that again? And you go, listen, there's a whole world out there.
Exactly.
If you want to get more complicated.
Exactly.
To that end, having reference material like that is nothing new. Like the spell cards for D&D is so cool, but I've seen so few people use them.
Sure.
Just because they don't come with the game. Now, I'm not saying they should come with the game. I'm saying they're great, but I don't think everybody knows about them. But in this case, you're like, hey, I have this setting for 5-minute RPG.
Right.
Look, it's got all this stuff. I just handed out to you and we're playing. Boom. It's not like, all right, so you got a copy. You want to be the special ops guy. Okay, so copy this stuff out of the book onto your paper and we got to print out. I'm like, that hybrid of, hey, here you go, pass it out, or write it on a paper, because you can do that, again, that sort of backwards compatibility.
And I love the idea that, in addition, there will also be separate cards so that you don't have to go with what's here. Mm-hmm. If I'm like, oh, cool, hey, by the way, you can also use this deck, which is the different traits deck, or the optional weapons, or the optional equipment, or anything like that. So that if I'm like, oh, by the way, hey, yeah, if you want to do optional equipment here, choose from this.
Exactly.
And you can either flip through or choose randomly or whatever.
Yeah. Josh suggested just getting out in front of it and calling the Game Master the dweeb. Then what's he going to do?
It seems like the simplest answer. Occam's razor scooter, as Matt Click would say.
Harry said, card templates would be an amazing addition to the PDF. It would kind of be all that stuff.
Absolutely.
Where it's like, hey, you can print out and make your own.
Totally. All that stuff. And then, you know, the idea would be it's super reskinnable, and we probably have a GM section or a 5M section or an FM section, whatever. I would probably abbreviate it 5M.
Anti-meridian.
Not FM.
Post-meridian.
AM. PM. But AM, PM. But the other cool thing is, like, if you have a mechanic that allows you, okay, so this is the concept so far. Let's say you're a medic. You have abilities, but they have different tiers depending on how many points you want to spend.
Oh.
So rather than a long list of like 50 things.
This and you have to be level 5 to do this. You're like, no.
No, you're like, okay, here's what you get. You can heal a little, heal a middle, or heal a lot. And it's basically 5, 10, 15.
I can't get over heal a little, heal a middle,
heal a lot.
Oh, that's good.
But so that would be cool. And I also think like a fighter's ability where it's like, all right, I'm gonna roll my ability, which is, you know, super bash. This system is going to be a little different because as of right now, there's not some separate pool of armor and hit points.
Yeah.
Which we'll get into a little bit how we're handling that. But so the fighter would say, well, I want to roll my bash to smash him. And I'm like, cool. All right. All right, cool. Smash. Oh, that's a 1 on the D20. And we'll say the fighter is really strong. So he uses a 12 and a 12. So I have a 13. So I'm like, all right, cool. So based on the economy, you can succeed whatever that bash. So it'll be like your 5, 10, and 15 of bash. You can do the 10. That means you can do this many things and make this cool.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Because I like the idea of also being able to spend it, like you said, on those abilities, because not only are you bringing the concept right over that you just taught, you know, the players potentially, but also that, you know, you still get to do cool stuff, and it depends on how well you do. Because if you're not really good at something,
right,
but you have an ability, you might still be good at it, but hey, sometimes you don't do so good.
Exactly.
You can only get the lowest level.
Exactly.
Maybe some abilities don't have a 5 and they're only 10 and 15. You know what I mean? Like
perfect.
Really hard stuff.
That
like
kind of stuff.
Exactly. Where you have all of that leeway to change it up to make things a little unique within the whole system.
And there would probably be optional, simple rules to level beyond the card where it's like, hey, here are some more abilities that your character can get. I'd also toyed with the idea of making it another deck so that not every, you know, maybe you don't want to do that, or you want to pull from a certain power deck. You're like, no, I want healing powers. I don't know. There's a lot of.
I was going to say, so this is like crazy. This is probably isn't something we'll do, but just like a fun thing that I just thought of. So legacy board games are like Risk Legacy or like Charterstone and games where you like put stickers on and cross stuff out and like destroy pieces of the game when things happen. Bye, Carol.
See ya.
And I like the idea that if you leveled up, you know, okay, you buy this setting, you know what I mean? And you're like, all right, so this is my character. And you maybe write your name on there. You know, everything else is printed, but you write your name in, and that's cool. You. But then you're like, all right, I get this ability. So you peel it off the sticker thing and you put the sticker on of your new ability. So
that'd be awesome.
You can, so it's still a card, but you can like, oh, I get the thing. I know. I'm getting a little ahead of us.
But I love that kind of idea because
now that's your character, but you're like, yeah, I just have my card and it's got my abilities.
You can totally, there are all kinds of ways to do that. Like have a blank card that is made for stickers.
Exactly.
So you don't,
this is my equipment
exactly.
And stuff. Yeah.
Where it's like, so,
I really like that.
So I want to hit you with a couple of things before we end. One, I want to talk a little bit about health.
Yeah.
And then 2, I want to talk about the movement system because I'm pretty excited about how simple it is and how interesting it is. I think it's interesting anyway. Let's talk about health. Health is a very high-level term that everyone will understand if I go, hey, it's your health. So we're not going to call them hit points because it's that sort of overall survivability that hit points is supposed to emulate. Meaning every time you get hit, it doesn't necessarily mean you get a wound. It means you're getting tired or your stamina's low, etc. So here's the idea. And let me know, obviously we have to play test it, but let me know if I was explaining it to you if this would make sense. Okay, you have a number of health equal to the highest number on your Constitution die.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, anytime something attacks you, you essentially lose health.
Yeah.
Okay. once your health is gone, then you begin to remove the lowest ability score die from your character sheet at a time. So your health is like your armor and your hit points all in one. Then you're left with your ability dice on the sheet. If you get hit again, you take the D4 off.
Because you still, if you say the D4 leaves dexterity, you'd still roll your story die if you needed that, but you don't have the added benefit.
Correct.
Okay.
So you could still make it. And then when all of the die are removed, you're unconscious.
Yeah.
Is the idea. I also toyed with the idea that the players roll everything. So the 5 master goes, all right, this monster is going to try to hit you. Roll dexterity.
Yeah, yeah.
Rather than have the monster roll and hit you and count their sheet, which maybe we do, and the monster counts their points and says, I want to do this to you, which is a cool idea.
But it's just kind of, again, sort of to that angle in my mind of, okay, maybe these people don't play role-playing games a lot. You know, we're trying to get our family to do it. That would keep my mom more engaged.
Yeah, it's like, all right, hey, this monster's going to try to hit you. Roll your strength.
Roll those two things and let's see what happens. Rather than, I'm going to do this and, okay, now you do this, you know?
Right. I'm like, oh, cool. All right, so you got this many points. All right, well, and maybe it comes into play where it's like, all right, well, this monster hits at a 10. Do you have enough to negate that hit?
Yeah. Exactly.
Basically, you buy your way out of the bad thing.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that part.
So instead, it's like,
yeah,
bad thing happens, automatic. Bad thing happens, monster bites you. What happens? You buy your way out of it.
Exactly.
You know, that's the idea. I don't know if that would be good or bad.
But I like a lot. We'll see if it works, but I like a lot using a very similar concept throughout, even if the economy's a little different, where you're like, it's threes or whatever. Just because it makes games a lot more simple than I think a lot of people like. Scythe has a really great underlying mechanic where you're like, you move pieces from one place to another and you gain this ability.
Correct.
And you get rid of that cost. And that like sort of arcs through so many different things that once you know that, you're like, oh, hey, look, I know how that works. Even though this section's brand new to me and I don't know what it is, that part makes it so easy. So I like kind of transplanting or using the same concepts over and over for that reason.
Right, because then it's intuitive. Yeah. And that's the idea. So that's the idea on health and monsters. But I loved the idea that so that there's less moving parts. Okay, what's the highest number on your die? That's your health. Once that's gone, remove all the die from lowest to highest. Once you're out of dice, you're unconscious.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, I like that.
And then the final thing is the movement system. All right, so here's how this, I'll just hold it up like this. So the movement system is called the hand measurement method.
Oh,
okay.
I was like, I don't know what you're holding up.
So if you want to play the 5-minute RPG on a tabletop, but you don't have a battle mat with a grid or something like that, you use the hand system. So you choose one pleasure.
Choose your pleasure.
Oh,
this game just got weird.
Hey, guys. Awesome. You choose one player who is the measuring stick so that the distance stays fair, and this also keeps people engaged. But basically, the distances are at hand, nearby, far, and distant.
You really need to change distant to wherever you are. Near, far, wherever you are.
So here's how that works. So, like, it's hard to kind of see. Can I use your pad there?
Yeah.
What's the... Oh, it's clipped.
It's clipped.
I was
it looked like it was going to fly off.
Whoa, he's just ignoring it.
Whatever.
So pretend you're looking above, and this is a top-down view. The idea is that at hand, or 5 feet, would be one thumb. So from here to here, basically a thumb across.
But you said they don't have a visual aid.
No, they don't have a battle mat with a grid.
Oh, but they still have pieces. Okay,
yeah, so they have. Well, they can use dice or pennies or popcorn.
Yeah, no.
But the idea is that this is 5 feet in any direction across your thumb, basically 5 feet, and then nearby is your whole hand. So like from the character anywhere. So wherever can you get nearby. Far is your forearm. So from your elbow to your, and then distant is your forearm and your hand. So it's from the whole thing. Now you don't have to use the same person to do all of it, but it's more fun to be like, all right, have Barker do it. And you're all of a sudden you're in a FIFA soccer ring.
You're like, nah, he's right next to me.
He's like, but that's the idea. Because then you're like, all right, cool. All right, well, I'm about 5 feet.
I think that we have to be careful to not discriminate because some people don't have thumbs.
Well,
they're not the measuring stick.
They're not the measuring stick. So we don't have to discriminate.
So far, that's my least favorite part of the system. But
why?
I think it's clever. It's just not for me. I don't think it's like bad, like objectively. I think I'm just like, I would never use that.
Can I just say, That is in addition to all of these.
Exactly.
The grid system where it's like, this is 5 feet, this is 30 feet, this is 60, this is 90 plus.
So that's
can I tell you something really funny?
Yeah.
Matt said that it was his favorite part of the system.
Oh man, that's so funny. That's what I'm saying. I'm like, I'm not saying it's a bad part of the system. I'm saying it's not the part of the system that I like.
So let's talk through very quickly why you don't like it so that I can get feedback. Why don't you like that?
I feel like I've played D&D 5th edition on like a map before without a grid, and I'm just like, I just ballpark it. I don't think it's worth like, sorry, you're right out some. I know. So I'm saying
you could still ballpark it.
So what I'm saying is I wouldn't use that because I'd go, no, you're close. No, you're not. Even because I'm so used to theater of the mind, even if I had something, I'd go, oh, you know what? I forgot to move that guy. He's actually a little close.
So there's no part of the system that you're like, oh, I don't like that part of it. You're just like, I'm not going to use that optional rule.
Yeah, I'm just like, I don't like that idea because I can handle it better already. I have, and it's not a big deal.
And theater of the mind is super. It's super built for that as well. But the idea is that you can have someone. The cool thing is you would take the least disengaged or the least engaged player.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Double negative.
Double negative. The most disengaged player and say, hey, will you be the measuring stick?
Yeah.
Because even if dude, you could get somebody who doesn't even play who would still have fun being the measuring stick.
Just being the measuring stick.
Or it's like, talk about the little brother's job. Like, hey, don't knock over the pieces, but do you want to be the measuring stick tonight while we play 5-minute RPG? Yeah.
The 2-year-old's thumb is like quarter of an inch.
All the combat takes place within 3 inches.
So Corey asks, why not make it 1 inch? So the 100%, I can tell you without even Tim answering. The idea is that if you make it a measuring thing that most people always have all the time, hands, fingers, and arms, that it doesn't matter where you play. You can play in a field somewhere and you're not like, oh, I didn't bring my measuring stick.
Correct.
But again, it's optional because you can either do theater of the mind or you can ballpark it.
Yep.
And then Matt Chasey says, I think the main issue with using that system might break immersion. Absolutely. Sure. But I don't think, like, again, we're coming at the angle of my mom's playing. So if more serious people use it, you can use a grid, you can do theater of the mind. But to me, I'm like, my mom's not worried about immersion.
And I also want to mention this too, is that for me, any sort of grid combat breaks immersion to a degree. Because which is fine. It's not that there's anything bad, but it becomes the gaming part of the RPG.
Yeah, yeah.
Where it's that, okay, hey, I'm going to move 1, 2, 3. It's a different part of my mind.
The hand system, no more than the grid system, does the same thing.
Maybe a little bit more but I can see the point you're making, which is, okay, to have a guy go, okay.
And that's what I mean. Like, it's all about tone.
It is all about tone, and it's called the 5-minute RPG.
Because I want my mom to
and a high five
when she tries to put her thumb in there and just can't do it. I'm like, that's part of the fun.
So you can easily dial this back and be like, we're not using any of these 5 master rules.
Yeah, yeah. I'm the game master.
But I like the system. I like the boom, and I'm going to reskin it, and that's totally fine because you're making a fair point. I keep imagining the game being played casually on a Sunday night as a party game.
Exactly, yeah, or just like the kind of thing you can play a lot of different places. I really dislike some board games that say you can play them anywhere because they all require you to bring them. Not that this doesn't,
right?
But like there's some like push it really hard, and I'm like, yeah, but then you got to set up all the pieces on the floor of whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this is a game that can be played a lot of places, but you still need a surface and people. You know,
sure. That's a very fair point. I was going to say it's a very fair point that if you say your board game can be played anywhere, and it can be, but it's kind of like to a degree, that is every board game.
Exactly. Like depends on how much you want to work for it.
It's gluten-free apples over here. Like it never had gluten. I can play this anywhere anyway. But that is the basic overall gist of the 5-minute RPG. And we're going to really get into it at Con. And I'm playing a game with a lot of awesome people. But I needed to talk through a lot of this stuff because to make sure it made sense.
Yeah, and we do actually have a couple of questions.
Sure. I'm thinking
Chris asked if magic was discussed. It wasn't. I mean, that's a simple one. Like we talked about, there will be probably supplemental things that will allow you to use magic. But at least for now, it's going to kind of all be rolled into the system, and the 5 masters are going to be adjudicating it all.
Yeah.
But adjudicating. I think I skipped a
Yes, you did.
And then Corey said, I think adding a grid actually helps people who are not used to RPGs. And I think that you're not wrong about that. We actually, when we played with our family, we didn't use a grid, but we used a visual aid because that really helped them. It's more just if you don't, say you are somewhere like sitting at a table in a pub. We don't call them pubs here, but maybe this is overseas.
A bar.
You know, if you're a place where you don't have it, because you can also use, you know, minis. It just lowers the barrier of entry to say you don't need anything else. You don't need minis and a grid or pennies or whatever you want to use.
Right. And as far as the magic goes, that is something we will probably be including in the rules so that you're like, hey, here's a magic system if you want to play Magic. But we also are looking to put those in the more setting specific little tidbits.
Exactly.
So like in your high fantasy system or your fantasy Magic, whatever, there would be magic in there. Now, what we would likely do is bundle up at least 1 or 2 mini settings in the first book.
Yeah.
So that people can go, oh, I want to play Magic. All right, well, here's the magic rules for that. But if the system's good enough, the magic system will be easy and reskinnable to be
something
also
else, or
this thing or that thing.
You could make this tech because the magic missile is just like, well, I shoot him with a gun.
Right.
Christian asked a question though, that you didn't actually cover, which is, okay, how far can you move? You mentioned the hand system, but I quickly jumped in to criticize it.
So at hand is 5 feet, and basically you don't have to move to do anything like that.
Yeah, 5 feet is free, basically.
5 feet is free. Nearby is 30 feet, and that would be the hand. Far is 60 feet, and that's your forearm.
And that's where the cost starts
going. Well, so yeah, that's an interesting point. I didn't mention that. And then distant is forearm plus hand, which is 90 feet. So I thought it would be interesting to let people move a lot. A lot of RPGs have to manage the economy between movement and actions. And so what they'll do is they'll make movement a kind of action. So as of now, the way that the movement works is every player gets a single move per turn. Just call it move. Totally separate from your actions or you're doing your stuff. What that means is every player can move nearby every turn.
Yeah.
So you can move 30 feet. So it's like, instead of in D&D where it's like, well, you can take a 5-foot step, but anything else costs. In this game, you can move 30 feet because I think it should be, at least the tone we're going for is fast, fluid action.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you can move, but you have to roll for it. So you can move further in the scene, but you can't just do it for free.
Exactly, yeah.
So the idea would be, it's like, all right, cool. Well, I have a D6 in my dex. So, all right, I'm going to use my nearby move. I'm going to use my free move to go 30 feet. All right, well, you're still not to the closing door. It's closing down you. All right, well, I gotta roll and see if I can make it out of there.
So you're going to instead try to use far.
Right.
Because you wouldn't get both.
Correct. I can move nearby for free, but to move the next 30 feet, which would get me to 60, I need to spend 5 action points is what we're calling them now. All right, so 19, 20, 20. All right, cool. I have enough to move distance. So, all right, I just tear and I run and I'm able to.
And so specifically that cost is not, you don't buy those. So with this roll, you couldn't, because you have over 20, you couldn't run 180 feet.
No.
Okay.
It would be to get 90 feet is 10. To
that's
get 60
it. You just have
feet
to
is
beat
5.
10.
That's
it.
Yep.
Gotcha.
And that's, again, this is the kind of thing where when you play test, because we might roll this and it's like, wow, those point values are way out of whack. That needs to be 10 and that needs to be 15.
And for me, I'm like, I feel like that's still a little too much movement, or the way you described it where you get both. But again, when we play test, that'll all come out.
Right.
You know, it's like stuff you don't worry about until, okay, well, let's see how it works.
Right. And the idea of getting both is that you don't get both separately. You get the first 30 feet of the 60.
Oh, okay. See, that's what I was kind of getting at.
You don't get to do 60 and then 30.
That's what I mean.
It's
like,
you get I get 30 for free because that's my nearby movement, but then I want to move far.
More.
Okay, cool. It's going to cost you 5. Now, here's the reason why these are low. Because I think it's cool to be able to be running and do stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So the low point cost would be like, all right, cool, 5. So I got a 7. So I can only move another 30 feet and get 60 feet.
60, yeah.
Right.
I see. So I thought you were saying you can move 30 and then you move 60.
You can move the next 30 to get to 60.
You can move 30, but failing the roll means you don't move another 30,
correct.
Not you don't move any.
That's correct.
That makes sense. There was another question Matt asked. Also, would you ever change the dice that characters use for abilities? For example, if they're injured, they might use a D8 instead of a D10. So We covered that a little bit, not necessarily changing the dice. I think I had that thought, and the reason I said, oh, that's not, that may not work as well, is the idea that you put them on your sheet and you just need one set. But as soon as you're like, all right, well, that D12 downgrades to a D10, now you need like 5 of each die to make sure you can get through the game.
Correct.
So instead, what you mentioned earlier was you do start losing dice.
That's correct.
And that means that, so you, instead of rolling your story die, your D20 and your D8, you just roll your story die because you lost your D8.
That's correct. And the other thing we wanted to consider was because that is something that could be a really cool effect temporarily. Like a creature could make it so that you have to roll another die.
Yeah.
But I have to make sure that we think about how we keep it very simple and fluid.
Exactly, because it also...
You don't want to be like, oh, which one was it again?
Yeah.
So that's where maybe just rolling unlucky makes more sense.
Exactly.
Then rather than lowering the dice, like, hey, this creature makes all your dexterity moves unlucky. That seems
because again,
like
using that concept.
Right.
Because the 5 master has to remember it too.
Correct.
We want to make it easy for everybody, not one person remembering all the rules.
That's right. And then the other thing is I want to make it so that you can use higher dice for other things. For example, maybe a specific kind of, so like say you're an archaeologist. If you, let's say you have the ability on your card that says you can use your intelligence die for all strength weapons. Or something. Basically, like once per scene, you can roll your intelligence die in place of any other die.
Yeah.
That's a cool ability to me.
Exactly.
So that's how I think I would probably want to work the economy to change them more up than down.
So that some people could do things better.
Right. And then handle the lower rolls with unlucky.
And then Chris asked, and it kind of was maybe a little unclear. Chris asked, Chris Johnson, how often would you be able to roll for extra movement, but beyond the free distance? And I told her every time you go, basically every turn, you get to move.
Yes.
And if you roll that 10, you can move 90 feet and then do something.
I want to make it clear, though, that is the same point pool. It is not a separate point pool.
Oh, okay. See, you didn't say that either.
So if
you kind of hinted at it, and I don't
sorry.
think that's what he's saying.
No. What I'm saying is you basically get a free move all the time. But you have to decide, okay, I move. Do I want to run all the way to the door? Or do I want to try to run halfway to the door and also throw this healing potion to my buddy?
Okay, so how does that work? So, okay, I want to run, but I also want to hit somebody.
Cool. Say. So the way it would work is I'm like, okay, cool. You can use your move action to get 30 feet.
He's 40 feet away.
Or nearby.
He or she.
All right, cool. So now I need you to roll your story die plus your dex. Because you're moving. So yeah, roll. Yep.
All right. So 12.
So at 12. So you now have 12 points to spend. You can either spend. So you need to spend 5 to get to 60. Okay. And then you have the remainder to do anything else. So now, if you want to do something else, you could probably do it. You'd have to.
But that's the important thing. Now, I want to hit somebody. That's boom, strength.
All right. Well, that's the thing.
And that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Because this puts me at a disadvantage if I want to run an attack. Now, maybe that's dex. You're running and you're shooting. You know what I mean? You're like, okay, well, that's dex. You're running and you're hitting. Maybe that's it.
That's something
maybe you can just re-roll this.
Yeah.
So, Chris, to answer your question, we're still play testing and we're not sure. But I like that it's all the same pool because I felt the same way, which was it seemed like, wow, you can do a lot. I know you wanted to be able to do a lot.
Oh, yeah, but a lot. But you have to choose. So I want it to be an economy.
Having it all in the same pool.
Okay. So what if...
Oh, go ahead.
What were you going to say? Were you going to say just roll your strength die and add it to the D20?
Yeah, so you roll all of them. You're like, all right, my dex and my strength. Now you just add the dex and that for the move.
Right.
But basically, your story die remains the same.
Correct.
And your D6 is, okay, I got a 3, but my D12 is the other one. Right. Now, if the attack was dex, you would have to roll your D6 twice.
And that's where, to me, I'm thinking it might just be easier to have a rule that says if you do anything while you're moving, it is a dex roll.
Yeah, and that's what I mean.
Just to keep it kind of thing super clean, because then a dexterous character can chuck a potion or hit a guy while running. A non-dexterous cannot.
Yeah, or he could try, but he's not going to get the bonus of his might because he's not waiting.
Correct.
I keep calling it might, but it's strength, whatever.
So it is also okay to be like, hey, look, I'm going to move. So, I don't know. That's an interesting thing because I wonder basically, maybe movement can be purchased anytime, no matter what roll you're making. Leave it up to the person to be like, hey, I want to roll this. Yeah. And I'm like, all right, I want to roll strength, but I want to move. In other words, so not just tying movement to dexterity rolls.
I like that better.
It's just like, okay, I want to do this. Okay, but I want to spend 10 of the points to move.
Because I want to run over there and hack the computer.
Correct.
Doesn't make sense to do dex for that.
No. Okay. So it keeps it simple. So if you're like, my intelligence is a D20 plus a D12.
Yeah. So Josh asked a question earlier that we covered, but I wanted to go over it again because we got a few new people. He asked, is this aiming to be an introductory game? What void is it filling? And he specified, I only played in D&D, so a little game deficient, asking out of ignorance, not being a jerk.
Sure.
And we mentioned earlier that this is to sit down and play with people, potentially introducing them to RPGs, or to just have something quick that you can play so that you can play RPGs with people you wouldn't otherwise. Our specific example, our family, very specifically our mom.
Yeah.
Because she could play this game in the state that it's in now with a little explaining and some of the stuff we talked about.
Correct.
But then he brought up, okay, but isn't coming up with the story, the time eater? The rules don't take much time if everyone knows them. So what do you think about that?
Sure.
We talked about the settings and stuff, but I don't think he was here for that.
Sure. So the way that it will be set out is that, and this is kind of down the road if all playtesting points to this as a good solution. The idea would be that the settings themselves would come with different decks that you use or roll tables. So these will be a both and scenario where there'll be cards or something you can roll on. And it would be like a toolbox similar to our adventure kits where you would then say, all right, cool, here's the scene. And then from this thematic set of decks, you're like, the location is the X, the challenge is the Y, the difficulty is the Z. That's your story help. And then, you know what I mean? Now, a 5-master could say, I want to use this location. So you can also build
you can
decks
have them
for scenes. Or you could do it all on paper.
But again, and I keep calling it this, and hopefully it sticks, backwards compatibility in that all the way down to the basis level, you could hand it to somebody, and with no prep, they could go, all right, location this, this, and this. Correct. Like rolling on a roll table. All right, well, we got to make this work. It kind of, why did the villain go to the, the dispensary is the only word I gotta go. Well, why did the villain go to the dispensary? I think we know why, but let's play 5 in an RPG to find out.
Right.
But so it's the kind of thing where, it would be introductory in all ways, in rules as well as story. But you can use that for fun, or like you said, they can build it from there. I think that it's, if it all kind of plays out the way we expect, I think there will be a lot of options for everybody.
Yes, and I like the idea that it hits every niche for me, because I would love to be able to, like me, you, and Cassie, who are experienced D&D players, to be able to get together one night and just be like, hey, you guys want to come over and play some 5 in an RPG?
Exactly.
Let's cool. What setting? I don't know. Let's do the post-apocalyptic one.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, let's do it. And then
it's a pickup game.
It's a pickup game of RPGs that's pretty simple. Like, all right, cool. You're the grifter. You're the scavenger. You're the, and you could, whatever.
Yeah.
You can choose your own. But then I'm like, all right, cool. The mission is the boom, boom. And I'm just pulling from these decks. That's cool to me. It sounds fun. And all the decks have cool thematic art, and they're very different. I love that idea.
Micah asked, what happens if you roll a 5 on the story die and the abilities die at the same time? High 10? Because you said high 5 on any die, right?
I have never thought of that, but I would call it a double high 5. Because this is a double high 5 to me, right? What do you call that?
Yeah, double high 5.
Yeah, give me a double high 5. I would call it a double high 5.
And both would explode and you just go for it? Or
well, 5s don't explode.
Oh, that's
he
a different
means
thing.
Two things of inspiration. If you roll 2 5s, you get 2 inspiration.
And Josh asks, so almost a stepping stone between something like Betrayal at House on the Hill and D&D. Yes, because Betrayal at House on the Hill, you could role play in it, but I didn't. Let's put it that way. Like, if you got the right group together, you could, but it's like the rules are driving the game a little bit more, and you have a lot less control. Whereas this would be like, if that's a 70-30 split, this is the opposite way, where it's like, hey, we're putting mechanics inside of what you could do in an RPG, but you start out knowing you're going to role play, which to me is different, because not only are you making the decisions, you're not placing the things. There's a GM that's potentially making the world come together and certain things happen. But more specifically, it's like you don't suddenly say become the betrayer. You know, your character isn't pulled out from under you. You kind of go in it knowing. But yes, that is a good way to put it.
And I think it would be cool to have a story deck that's like, there will be something written on your character card where it's like, you know, for the mechanic, it's like, you know, maybe you lost the ship you love and we'll do anything to get her back. Something like that. Yeah. But it would be cool if there was a story deck where it's like, all right, and then also it's like, hey, I have a love for drink and whatever. Like basically just like little bonds, flaws, traits, ideals kind of thing. So that you can have a more complex version of this 5-minute RPG game.
Exactly.
And I think seeing people hack it and do cool things with it is going to be part of the fun.
I think that's one of the biggest things is we're trying to make a system that so much can be added to, similar, say, to Genesis. But the idea is it's complicated to make a setting in that. Not to say you wouldn't need a lot with this, but the idea is Genesis, it still is a regular role-playing game. And even if, say, they come out with a whole cloth setting that you can use right out of it, you're still sitting down and people are making characters. And there's nothing wrong with that. You just know what you're in for that night. In fact, Josh said it would be handy. Well, Chris made a joke and said, great for those nights when someone can't make a session or your soccer team just lost and you need a game to make your night better. Because Prupra mentioned that Denmark got kicked out. So she came to see us. But then Josh said the same thing. Would be handy for during those weeks where our home group is doing one-on-one with the DM and everyone else is hanging out. They could all grab 5-minute RPG and hop in. Exactly. But the reason that is a really important sentence to me is because you could also grab some very simple board games. But when you play a board game, or even if I say board game, like a card game, like, oh, this is fun, you're missing out on the elements that you might like about RPGs.
Yeah, the collaborative storytelling part.
Whereas this allows you to play an RPG quickly,
right,
and still get that same experience. But you're like, hey, you know, it's just different. And then Matt asked the most important question. Is this just a grown-up version of Crunches and Dragons?
100%. This is 100% a grown-up version of Crunches and Dragons. Absolutely that.
Christian is also from Denmark, so to both of you, I'm sorry. I guess
man,
they lost.
And gal. Sorry, fella.
I missed that.
Lady. But yeah, this is just a, like, hey, it's a cool thing that we want to be able to run quickly. And then also, it'll be so much fun to make micro settings for this.
Yeah.
Like, there's a micro setting we made for the back of a book we just came out with called The Mecha Hack, called Lodestar Alpha. It would be super rad to have a Lodestar Alpha deck that you could play the 5-minute RPG with.
Yeah.
Or Crore, or
Harbinger, or Dragon,
any of that stuff where it's like
matter,
just cool, like, oh, cool. Like, it's just fun to be able to have a light, complex, like possibly, well, I don't know, how do you say it? You like backwards compatible. I'm trying to think of the way.
It's a rule set, but you can like with additional stuff. I don't know exactly what you're going for, but
I'm just trying to think of it's made for attachments.
Yeah, exactly. It's modular.
It's modular. It's very modular so that it's like, hey, I don't like this. Yeah. But I think the core system of rolling the D20 and the attribute and then buying your successes and failures, I like that idea.
Yeah.
I think it's going to work well with people because they like to be able to have a say. Not just like, okay, roll. Sorry, you fail. All right, Dad.
Exactly. You're
it's like,
what do you want to try?
What do you want to do? Because you have this.
Like,
oh, I don't know. Well, guys, what should I do? Oh, I don't know. Well, you have this. Well, don't forget your ability. I feel like the collaborative nature of the economy is going to be good.
Exactly. So two last things. Okay. One, Christian earlier asked if we were going to play it. We're not going to play it now. In fact, Tim is debuting it. The first time probably that it'll get play tested is at AtCon, our convention coming up. And that's the first time he's going to really try it out with real people, the whole shebang.
Yeah.
And probably have to come up with stuff on the fly because, it'll be the first time it's play tested. But that'll be the first time it's played. And then someone else, what was the other thing I was going to bring up? I don't remember. But people are saying, that it's expansion packs. Chris mentioned that's kind of what it'll be like, the deck idea and everything.
Totally. And there will be rough rules and like suggestions and stuff so that you can make your own stuff super easily. Like, I want people to be able to go, hey, I want to run a game in my setting, like of Caldera or whatever, and just go, yeah, so here are the guidelines. I can just reskin these powers, or here's a list of powers, stuff like that, where you could just make your own as well very, very easily.
Yeah, Micah said, I love how you guys are excited for people to hack your game. Like, that's going to be the point. We're going to try to produce a whole bunch of stuff for it, but it'll be really cool for somebody to say, hey, I homebrewed my setting. But I think the idea that, like, if you have all, are you ready, guys? Everybody get ready. Sit down for this. If you have all the buckets, if you give people all the buckets they need to fill, it makes it easier than I'm going to make a setting for D&D. All right, I need a map. I need this. Oh, I need a town. What's the adventure going to be? Now it's like, hey, instead, you need these cards. They'll need these abilities. You'll need 5 characters. You know what I mean? It's almost like you can go in and just fill all the spots and go, hey, look, I made my setting in 5-minute RPG. Now we can play it.
That easy. And we've even talked about, now this is being bandied about. This isn't official. But the idea is that making it so that people can put out their own settings as long as they put the 5-minute RPG sticker on the front of it.
Yeah, like some sort of
basically like
gaming
some sort of
deal.
Open gaming license in a way where it's like, hey, you know, and we'll hash all that out. But the idea is like, yeah, we would love it if you all came out with a PDF of your, you know, like what I really want to run in this is a Predator game.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Marines versus a Predator. That would be so fun. But the point is that we would love for you to be like, hey, here's my hack of my alien races for 5-minute RPG.
Yeah.
That'd be really rad. So,
and then Tomiko said, fleshing out a game idea is such a pain in the ass sometimes.
Sure.
Exactly.
Yes, it is.
That's the idea, is like if we give you the buckets to fill and you fill it,
right.
It's a little easier.
And that's it. And make it so modular that you're like, yeah. And you could sit down and explain it to anyone. And listen, you're going to homebrew anyway.
Yeah.
So why not give you a really simple, elegant framework? And you're like, this is how I do the recipe.
Framework. That's the word. It's a framework.
It's
specifically because in programming, that's what you do. I use a framework when I make websites because I'm like, hey, this stuff you have to do over and over, a login system, all this.
Got him.
Somebody did it and it's really good and it's open source and I'm just going to use that and I'm going to build on it. And that's it.
Got him.
And then Grayson said, so almost like a mod directory, but for settings, that would be cool. Like gaming mod directory. And I'm like, yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
I'm going to download the Aliens versus Predator mod.
Pretty much. And then you're like, okay, cool. And then it's super easy where you're like, all right, here go the 5 character types. That is what, dude, I would love to do that. You have your Dutch, you go through the whole, like, the point is, how awesome would it be if you're like, hey guys, you want to run 5-minute RPG Predator?
Exactly.
And you just go there and download it. Yeah. So yeah, that's all my thoughts and ideas and James's thoughts. Oh, what was your idea? We never
time. I wasn't going to bring it up because we were going over it and people were so excited about it that I'm like, we'll talk about that later because I want to flesh it out anyway. It's very simple. It's not a big deal. So
that is the cliffhangerist of cliffhangers.
I know it is. I wasn't going to bring it up because nobody else said anything.
So let's end it with a toast. Thank you all for watching, for tuning in. This has been great. And please leave your comments below. What did we miss? What do you want to see? What don't you want to see? What do we have right and what do we have wrong? Any of that, put it in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe if you've never done that so you know when we go live. And like this video. Leave a comment. Share the video. That helps us get the word out.
May you mend the first break.
May you kill the first snake.
And may you conquer everything you undertake.
Slancha. All right, guys. Until next time, may your dice roll high.